let's bring in the Secretary of State from Arizona. As mentioned, we are following a lot of different stories tonight. I'm curious your reaction, because you are the person in one of the 50 states who can speak to how this works. So your reaction to the president, who we've broken away from, making that claim. Are you aware of any illegal votes that are being counted in your state? How would you give viewers and citizens the facts tonight in contrast to what we heard?
Absolutely not. There are not illegal votes being counted in the state of Arizona, and probably not anywhere. I don't know any of my colleagues across the country who would allow illegal votes to be counted in their states. And so, honestly, this kind of disinformation really just makes our jobs harder. A big part of our jobs is working to help ensure the integrity of the elections and maintaining the public's trust in that. And when people like the president undermine that, it undermines this entire democratic institution. It is extremely frustrating, but we are doing our jobs here in Arizona and continuing to count all of the legal ballots, and we'll do that until we're done.
And Secretary Hobbs, again, for the purposes of education, walk us through, if there is an incident or a situation where a court intervenes, what is the process whereby votes may be altered or excluded? Because in your state, for example, we don't believe that's happened. I know you know the most about Arizona, but as a Secretary of State, can you walk us through that so people understand the difference between someone saying that and the actual times when that can occur and how it works?
Right. So there are party observers allowed in the tabulation centers for the purpose of, making sure everything's going the way it should and it's all on the up and up. And they can call ballots into question. There is the process of reconciling the provisional ballots to make sure that they're eligible to be counted. Those are ballots that could be challenged. But so far, we haven't seen anything that would cause a challenge to be brought. And there are observers in the tabulation centers, and everything right now is going the way that it's supposed to be going.
And walk us through, while we have you, what happens when a state then gets to its final count and goes towards certification and the submission of those electors? Because as we've emphasized to viewers, that's a process ordained by law, not by any particular politician, be they an incumbent or a challenger.
Yep. In Arizona, I certify the official results, which is happening here on November 30th. And then my office will convene the electors for the presidential candidate who is the winner of the election in Arizona. And those electors will meet and cast their ballots for the president, the winner of the presidential contest.
Understood. And Secretary Hobbs, while we have you, there was some controversy on the ground in Arizona regarding protests and other gatherings outside of some of the counting facilities. Of course, individuals have free speech rights to speak or protest. We're looking at some of this earlier today. You can see, as long as they're in safe places at the proper distance. Can you tell us what's happened on the ground and whether, in your view, most of these have been lawful protests, or has anything gotten to the degree of attempted interference?
Well, I think these protesters were trying to get inside the building. They were not allowed inside of the building. Obviously, that many people in the tabulation center would cause massive disruption and keep the people from doing their jobs, which is counting the ballots, which is actually what these protesters are asking for. So, I think their time better be spent not counting the ballots. So, I know that Maricopa County Sheriff's Department was involved in making sure that all of the workers were safe. You can see where they're gathered here, and this is the parking lot of the facility. And so I think there were concerns about people getting safely to their vehicles, and that was all managed and handled by Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. And my biggest concern is the safety of these workers.
Understood. Secretary Katie Hobbs, thank you very much for joining us at a busy time for your state and around the nation.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.